What up, y'all? Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. So the reason I'm starting this one is this is kind of a preview, I guess, of the open mic. If you randomly see this, you're more than welcome to jump on the open mic. I can get up to 10 people at a time. And I hope to see some new faces in there as well as familiar ones. I'll start, with a subject matter and kind of wait for people to trickle in, and then just kind of just freestyle from there. That's why it's called an open mic. So anything that you guys want to hear and any content that you want me to cover or kind of expound on in this panel or any panels in general, reply to me by email, or also just hop on board. I'll send you the link and you can hop up onto a stream. That being said, let me get a topic. So the topic of this insecurities of Dunya, and of course, human beings, we're all insecure, right? I mentioned before on several streams that I dealt with problems such as jealousy for a very long period of time. Jealousy was, I can even remember when I was a kid. I had a lot of siblings, so I'd be jealous of my siblings. I'd be jealous over, people in my class that did better than me. Excuse me, the guys that got the girls, all this stuff. Sorry, I drink quite a bit of tea. It's kind of giving me the burps. But anyway, besides that, yeah, that didn't stop ceasing after I reverted as well. And one thing that I realized is, at least I acknowledge my insecurities. And that's as much as I would like to think it's to my benefit, it's probably to my detriment, especially social wise, because when people realize that you're insecure, as much as people say they like honesty, as much as people say they like people that hold themselves accountable, they really don't still respect that person, and they do treat a person different. When you see your weakness, especially to be honest, especially if you're a man and you're trying to attract the opposite sex, they of course love confidence. The thing that sucks though is if they know you're insecure about things, you have an uphill battle to fight to get them to retain that interest. And that's why I think a lot of men, we really suffer from mental health problems, is because we have to be the Superman in order to attract women, right? We have to be a Superman. We don't have any flaws. We don't fail. We don't have any insecurities, or we have insecurities. We have to keep them to ourselves. And I think that's terrible, because I think women, on the other hand, it's pretty well accepted what their insecurities are, and they pretty much put themselves out there. Now, these days, honestly, with a lot of the feminist movement and the modern businesswoman, right, there's this thing of this invincible super Wonder Woman that, doesn't have any flaws or weaknesses. She doesn't cry in public and all this stuff. But wallahi, man, we all know that that's a facade. But anyway, I guess I can get to the meat and the bones of this, because I think it's a little late. And, a lot of people may not come into this one. So I'm just going to, get straight to the point. I've always thought about this, and maybe I can't judge one person's opinion for a large group of people, but all too often I see one person's opinion usually is the opinion of many, right? Even if they might be in the quote minority. So I've always wondered sometimes, why do pious people intimidate people that aren't quote religious, or that maybe don't subscribe to any religion at all? And this doesn't mean that these people are inherently bad whatsoever. It's just, because it happens on the opposite end too. There's pious people that are intimidated by people that don't practice or that don't have any religion at all as well. But, I think the other way around is not really talked about, right? So I was talking with an individual, and I was just like, hey, what do you think about this? Because there's a lot of Bollywood actresses and a lot of just Muslim practicing celebrities, also celebrities of other religions, right, that just say, hey, this industry is not conducive with my personal beliefs. I'm going to dip out. This is something that I morally object to. I'm not sacrificing my values for the almighty dollar, right? And to me, that's super admirable. That shows you have integrity. That shows you have decency. That shows that you believe and you have convictions. And I think that in our society these days, universally across the world, the idea of being corruptible not sticking to your guns, basically sacrificing your well-being, and whether it be spiritually, mentally, or whatever, for the almighty dollar and for a recognition from people that actually probably don't give a damn about you, right? And in particular, I was thinking about, I'm going to give like two main examples. I'm going to give examples about there's Halima Aden, and I know for sure on social media, there's probably people that criticize her because she made a stand up for what she believed in. And she was like, hey, this industry is trash. I'm constantly having to compromise my morals, even though when I straight up say, hey, this is what I stand for. And especially to see a woman do that, that's really beautiful and powerful, because we all know how the entertainment industry treats people. In general, sex sells, and they want to sexualize everybody as much as possible. And to see that sister stand up for what she believed in is such a beautiful, strong thing, especially considering that she also valued family. I mean, that's so rare these days. I mean, that, somebody also respects the influence that her family has on her because she sees what they're coming from, right? All too much in the West, it's very hyper individual culture. It's like, I'm going to do whatever I want to do. And if you don't like, screw you. I don't give a damn. I'm an adult. I can do whatever I want. And granted, hey, I'm not going to be a hypocrite. I've done that too, right? But at the same time, it's kind of like hyper individual culture is a very dysfunctional and destructive culture. So, that being said, I fully support what she did to the utmost. She has more courage than even I do, right? I don't even think I have as much courage as that woman, and it inspires me as a man to also have convictions and stand up for what I believe is right as well. And then a couple other instances too is Bollywood. Bollywood, we already know, is it's just Indian version of Hollywood for the most part, and that there's a lot of problematic things they also have, and they're they things they push. Especially, I think that one of the most toxic things that you see in Bollywood movies is, also the rampant colorism that really is super big in India and Pakistan, and Bangladesh, like this obsession with fairness and light skin. It's for various reasons. I think a lot of it actually has to do with color, the British Empire and colonialism as well. I think that a lot of countries around the world feel insecure that they want to emulate, Western kind of styles of not only dress, but also Western styles of beauty. And, we don't need to expound that, the white beauty standard, the blue-eyed, blonde-haired beauty standard exists, right? And is also coupled with having really light skin. Ironically, a lot of people want to have a tan these days, but still on the opposite end, it's kind of, people always think the grass is greener. It's kind of crazy like that, right? So there's a lot of sisters that were involved in the Bollywood industry that, just step back and say, hey, this industry, is super corrupt. It pushes my morals. I'm not happy. And that's another thing too. It's like, as much as people gripe about their individual happiness and how much happiness is the paradigm to the achievement to have in life constantly is to achieve your own happiness and seek your own happiness. When other people do that, if it's for religious reasons or spiritual reasons, I always notice that those people are the ultimate hypocrites. They'll say, oh, that's stupid. I can't believe they did that. And I was like, I really wonder, like, do you hear what you're saying? You know what I'm saying? Like somebody that says, oh, I want to do this and do that for notoriety, to go viral, to get clout, to hypersexualize themselves, and all that stuff, put themselves in the tabloids. That's commendable, or that's something that you don't mind. But when somebody says, hey, I'm going to, let's say start wearing hijab, or hey, I'm going to start dressing more modestly, or hey, I'm going to stop drinking alcohol and doing drugs, or hey, I'm going to stop having promiscuous sex. I really think that that's ironic that those people will vocally say, hey, that's stupid. That's ridiculous. And I think that also it just shows the state of our society, that people, care so much about, quote, individual freedom, but they only care about individual freedom of the style of the individual freedom that they do. Right. And I think if people have an insecurity because they feel they can never measure up like that. Like, I think that at the same time, they're insecure and they wish that they had as much conviction for something as much as these people. right? Like if you call yourself, this and that, but you very, very rarely adhere to any of the teachings, but you still want to be a part of that culture, right? To have fire insurance. We call it fire insurance for a reason. Fire insurance, like, oh, I don't want to go to hell and stuff like that. And, I might have a stream about that, about what, fire insurance, because I've heard that a lot in topics about religion and spirituality and stuff like that, is being the primary reason why people, even if they don't practice, they'll still consider themselves something. So because they still fear death. And at the end of the day, they still want, quote, fire insurance, right? Which is pretty interesting. But yeah, I think it's really ironic that people have this double standard. And, in society that, oh my God, there's so many double standards between men and women. There's double standards in this and double standards in gender and sexuality and race and all that stuff. I think that's the unspoken double standard that society sets. Society is like, what? You quit making millions of dollars for what? I mean, if you look at my boy Dave Chappelle. Dave Chappelle turned down multi-million-dollar deals because he wasn't happy. He wasn't spiritually invested in something that was his creation, which was his own show. And people still said, oh, you're stupid for turning down money. It shows that money is all that some people matter. Money is the only thing that matters to some people. Morals don't matter. I guarantee even some of these girls that, or men too, but I mean, I think women are a little bit more conservative in how they view maybe being in a relationship. Now, if they're single, they can say, hey, I date, I hook up with this guy, hook up with that guy, I'm promiscuous or whatever, don't slut shame me. But I think when the confines of a relationship, they're like, I would never cheat on my boyfriend. I would never cheat on my husband. I guarantee some of those people that are the most vocal about it, putting themselves on a moral pedestal, they'd be the first people to cheat if it had a financial incentive for them or getting new opportunities. And it's really sad that that's the state of society. And granted, especially if you're somebody that's raised in poverty, right? I can see you're raised in poverty. Yes, you compromise your morals to make ends meet and do this and do that, right? But it's a lot of these people, they don't have any need of that. They're set. They have money. And see, the thing is with this, our society is you never have enough money. You constantly have to strive for as much as possible. So in order to attain wealth and attain riches, people will continue to sacrifice their morals and also their relationships with other people. People will sell out have sold out their own families for the almighty dollar. People have, destroyed their families for the almighty dollar. People have destroyed themselves for the almighty dollar. I think about a lot of the movies where people are put in compromised positions and were forced to do scenes or acts and stuff that they disagree with, but because the producers and the directors and all the people that ran the movie wanted a good scene, they basically pushed and intimidated these people to do something that they didn't want to do. I think one particular is a movie called Blue is the Warmest Color. It's a French film about a young lesbian couple, right? And there's a lot of explicit sex scenes in that movie. And the woman in that movie recently came out and said, hey, we felt like prostitutes. Like, this wasn't artistic whatsoever. This felt like the director and the producers of this movie just wanted to get off and just put us in this scene for their own enjoyment, And I think about that a lot. Like, how many movies do you see like a topless scene? It's like, is that even freaking necessary? It's just a selling point just to get people interested in seeing the film, to see somebody naked. It has nothing to do with any artistic credibility or anything like that. It's like, look at the Harvey Weinsteins and all those guys, the casting couch and all that stuff. It's like those people didn't care about art. They care about sexual exploitation. But at the same time, people don't want to have a dual conversation about how sexual exploitation is linked with a hypersexual culture. Like you can't have one without the other, right? If you have a high demand for sex, people are going to exploit that. You know what I mean? Because they know sex sells. So that in of itself is basically the gist of it. I think I'm going to bring this topic back up. If I have some, people come in a little later, man. I think my man Spiritual Logic said it the best himself on the last stream, where he talked about, hey, there's the way of the world. Like, hey, no matter what system that you believe, a higher power or the Most High or God, Allah, whatever like that, set for man to have on this planet, it's always going to get super corrupted because man has his own desires. Man is naturally rebellious. We are naturally rebellious, especially the youth. In particular, the youth is like the paradigm of rebellion, and that submitting to authority, submitting to something for whatever reason is viewed as upon as dogmatic and backwards and stupid and lame and corny and all these things, right? But people will go the leaps and bounds, especially as long as they feel like they're being successful. Like if they're being successful, they're making money, it doesn't bother them. But when their desires lead them down a dark path and they leads them through depression, anxiety, really messed up traumatic experiences and stuff, then after that, they kind of see the light a little bit, but they're so ingrained. We're creatures of habits, right? We're so ingrained in what we do on a daily basis that afterwards we kind of just don't know. We're like, hey, well, drinking and doing drugs, that's all I know. Being promiscuous is all I know. Me sacrificing my integrity and lying to people in order to get ahead, that's what I do. Backstabbing people, backbiting people, and gossiping about people every chance I can get. That's all I know how to do. Being lazy and not amounting to anything, being selfish, that's all I know how to do. You know what I mean? And that's the saddest thing, because by then, for a lot of people, it's too late. So that's all I have today. Thank you so much for tuning in. I will rebound on these conversations when I have an open mic. I think these are really good talking points to kind of get in conversations. Hey, Curly. Hey, what's up, bro? Hey, man, you want to come on, bro? I'll give you the link if you want to jump on, man. I still got a little energy in me, man. So I'd love to chop it up with you. Thanks for coming in. Hold up. Give you the link. Let me go get something to drink real quick. Hold up. There we go. Say join in 2 minutes. Cool. Yeah, I'll keep this going for like about, I'll wait for you and then we can chat it for a little bit longer. But I gotta admit, I'm a little hungry. So the sooner the better, Need to quickly pray? Okay. MashaAllah. Word. Yeah, so also, go ahead. I'm going to put a link to a really good podcast called the Young and Muslim Podcast, man. You should check them out as well. Maybe one day, inshallah, I'll be able to get in contact with those guys and start something off with them. Yeah, it's linked to let me put that and type this in chat. Yeah, really good podcast, man. Those brothers, man. I was listening, they had this guy on there talking about the difference between culture and religion and issues in the Ummah. And one thing that he hit really hard that almost brought me to tears is anti-blackness in the Ummah. And it's like the one form of racism I think that we as a community are too afraid to talk about. And racism amongst people of color is huge. And nobody wants to talk about it. And I think it's really sad, especially because I do have friends that are Desi. I do have friends that are from different cultures or, Arab and stuff. But it's like the elephant in the room. It's a conversation I think no one can get engaged in because it's always the common enemy is white supremacy, right? Quote unquote. But it's like, I mean, bro, are we going to talk about, your family's pious or whatever like that, but, your uncle owns a liquor store, or are we going to talk about how the barriers that, Black and African Muslims suffer from when it comes to marriage and, discrimination and prejudice on that? Are we going to talk about how African and Black scholars are often marginalized? Are we going to talk about the fact that African American Muslims are basically the people that built the foundation for international Ummah to be in this country in the first place, and how they never get credit? Point blank, period. Are we going to talk about how the modern face of Islam is Malcolm X, at least in the West? So these are things that I never talked about. These are unwritten rules. And I think it's really sad that it's like that, and that's one thing I'm kind of treating this channel. I'm going to have a whole episode, and hopefully I get other people from other communities to come in to be a part of this conversation, because I don't like one-way conversations. I never will. That conversation has to be a very complex one, and I want honesty. I want people to be honest. If they're problematic, if they're, I don't want them walking on eggshells. I want to say, hey, why is this the issue? What happened? Like, what's going on? And if we don't attack this head on, it's going to be a issue that we can't come back from irresolute later on. I think, especially in the West, I think our communities are getting so segregated. It's like liberal and progressive Muslims right here. And for my personal opinion, most of them are from an Arab background, Arab and Desi background. They got the little Muslims right here. Then you have the more conservative ones, and those ones are maybe from like the African continent and things like that, and reverts. Maybe they're more of the conservative side. And then, you got the racial and cultural background, and that being expounded on there. And it's going to reach a point to where we're really not going to have any sense of a community whatsoever. It's just going to be these segregated masjids and these segregated ummahs and these segregated, Muslim communities within cities mostly, and there's never going to be any collaboration. There's never going to be any understanding. Yeah. Man, I'm so hungry right now. I ain't even going to joke, man. Take your time when you offer salah, man, but your boy over here dying, man. I could probably talk for like about 15 minutes, man. And after that, I got to chew. I got to chow on something, bro. I haven't eaten since lunch. But I see I got one other person in here. You can make yourself known, show up in the chat, show some love, and I'll send you the link, and you can jump on whenever you want to as well. Welcome to my channel. Don't be a stranger. So in general, man, also something that tripped me out today too. So it rained for like the first time in a while, and there was this big rainbow, bro. I haven't seen a rainbow in forever, man. And stuff like that makes me want to cry, bro. Like, it was so beautiful. Because I always remember when I was a kid, hearing about Noah and the flood, and what the rainbow symbolized, was like the promise that, God and Allah, the Most High, was never going to try to wipe out humanity again. And it's so surreal when you see that. It just makes you realize the majesty of just nature, And I think about the majesty of nature, like everything on this planet is synced up to be just perfectly in sync. Like, it's not, I don't think all this is like an accident. Like, that's always going to be a thing. Like, this is not just some random chaotic accident that happened. And, everything interacts together and balances each other out. There's just such a flow of life. Okay, man. Hey, yeah. So let me give you the link again. Yeah, but I just look at the mystery and the majesty of this life, and it's literally that one thing, more than socializing and talking to people and having outlets like this. That's what keeps me on this planet. I look forward to seeing another sunrise, to hear the birds chirping, to see the squirrels running around, to see the trees, and the majesty of nature, and all those things. It's just breathtaking. I think if everything was just a big city, and that's the only thing I don't like about cities is that when people live in cities, they just get so preoccupied and so obsessed with watching TV, entertainment, and gadgets and all this stuff, man, and tech and all this kinds of stuff, man. To me, that it gets real old real fast, man. It seriously does. Yeah, man. Just I can't imagine living without nature, man. Just the fresh air of the wilderness, man. I went out to a small town called Sebastopol, which is by Santa Rosa, and it was fantastic. I got my man Curly on here. Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. How's it going?
Oh, well, Alexander, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you, brother.
I think I can hear you 2 times because of the stream as well.
Word.
It's good. It's good.
Nothing much, man. How was your day?
It's good. Alhamdulillah, I can't complain.
Alhamdulillah, bro. So the topic of this is insecurities of the Dunya, and I thought about this a lot. There's a gentleman, I forgot his name. He was actually in on the open mic, but he didn't join the panel. And he has a channel where he basically is like, hey, as a revert, it's interesting to hear your perspective because you don't have these ingrained insecurities that people that are born into, the deen may necessarily have, because they always look at the West as being the best and the West being so progressive, and the West, being light years ahead of the Muslim world and the rest of the world and all that kinds of stuff. So they kind of emulate, Western values and things like that, or they feel the pressure to emulate Western values to be successful, to fit in, and all this stuff. And I do unfortunately meet a lot of people that are like that. Like I can definitely tell that their parents practiced, and then they kind of just fell to the wayside due to being corrupted by, living amongst Western values and living in Western countries. And this topic hits hard because there's a sister that basically, I was just, she's from a Desi background. I was trying to learn more about, her culture and her views on stuff, because, she definitely seemed like, she didn't practice. But, there's sisters that look like they don't practice, but on the other hand, they're like, hey, I don't wear hijab, but I do pray, and stuff like that. Yeah, I might drink every now and then, but, I do X, Y, and Z also. And I fast for Ramadan and all this stuff. So, it's a complex thing for a lot of people, right? But I asked her a couple of times, I was like, hey, what do you think about this Bollywood actress that left Bollywood in order to practice? She left Bollywood, puts on hijab, she married a sheikh and stuff like that. She just thought, oh, that's stupid. And that kind of broke my heart, to hear somebody say something like that. Like, that woman is stupid because she chose to do the right path, go to her right path. Like, it's one thing if that's okay for you, like you as an individual, right? That's something that you wouldn't do. But to say that somebody's stupid for having convictions and having morals because they aren't happy in the situation they're at and they want to get more closer to their creator, for you to say something like that, it's like, why even consider yourself Muslim at all? Period.
Yeah, that's true. I agree with that. I think a lot of it might come down to social conformity, because when you have the dominant majority acting in a certain way, the minority always wants to conform. So I think one good example would be, I think there was a study or research that was actually conducted by a university in America, where they actually got, I believe they got 9 students, and then what they did was so it was like a test. So in that test, one of them was the control group, and the rest of them were just dummies. They were just actors. So what they actually did is that they were trying to guess the color of a specific shape or something like that. Wow. And then what actually happened was that the student had to go right. So he would say that's white, but then 8 of them said no, that's black. So what ended up happening was that 60% of the students actually ended up conforming and going against logic and common sense just to conform with the other students. and only 30% said no, I'm sticking to my guns, and I'm saying I'm sticking to it, and they weren't insecure about their decision, isn't it? So I think, yeah, like that sister you mentioned is probably due to, I'll say it's not maybe insecurities, but also conformity to the majority or to the dominant culture. Because I think historically the dominant culture will always swallow the minority cultures.
Yeah, definitely.
That's what I think. I think even me, I kind of hesitate when it comes to assimilation and multiculturalism, because I know it doesn't really lead to much benefit if there's no like overall moral hierarchy. Like people don't believe in like a similar religion. So if I was a white man, you're a black man. If we had the same religion, we could come to a common cause. But I think if I have my own culture and you have your own culture, there will always be a source of friction and separation between us.
Yeah, and I agree, brother. And one thing that I think about, for instance, right, and I'm saying, well, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, guide us all. I'm not perfect, nobody's perfect, and maybe inshallah she will turn a new leaf and stuff like that, and increase her iman and stuff like that, and try to get closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But that being said, I brought this up one time, and yeah, I think this is the first time I'm talking to you about it, as far as you being like live with me and stuff. I talked about this one time. It was basically around the holidays and Christmas time, and there was an event at work. I didn't agree with it and stuff like that, and I got a little upset about it and stuff like that, because now that I understand my dean, and of course there's different schools of thought and stuff like that, but I think universally one thing that is super frowned upon more than eating pork and alcohol, and this is the biggest sin anybody can commit. So this is where I draw the line, right? It's one thing to, you drank alcohol a couple of times or something like that, or you committed zina. The most unforgivable sin that I've ever seen, that as far as my scholarly knowledge, is shirk, right? Shirk is something that's not funny. So shirk is something that is something not to be taken lightly. And if you take shirk lightly, you might as well not consider yourself a Muslim, right? That's the way I look at it, right?
That's true. Yeah.
So
it's like shirk, then murder after that.
Yeah, exactly. And for me, participating in holidays that are pagan, which unfortunately Christmas is, like, it's not about the birth of Jesus and all that stuff. That's a front basically for the pagan undertones of that holiday, and there's the history of it, and it's undeniable. Like historians universally, Western historians as well as historians all over the world acknowledge this, right? And the fact that people can take it, like so-called people that are Muslim can take that lightly and still celebrate Christmas and get buy presents and freaking have Christmas trees and all that stuff. To me, it's like, it's terrible. That's like me, like if I was a Christian, right, and I was in a satanic worship, or a satanic ritual, you know what I'm saying, or a pagan ritual that was obviously pagan. So she got kind of defensive about it, and she was just like, "Oh, I thought it was kind of dumb because we're of the same religion, and you're just insecure, and you should be, securing your faith in order to do that." I'm like, no. And I tried to tell this because she had somebody in that wasn't Muslim conversation, and I was just like, I wanted to say it and just be like, it's like, and I was like, sister, because there's a lot of people that are raised and maybe they don't understand what shirk is, So I like to give her the benefit of the doubt, but to a certain point, I was just like, hey, yes, I'm not the most perfect person. You might have known that I've done this. You might have known that I've done that. But one thing I would never compromise on is I at least always try to get more knowledge, right? And maybe because how you grew up, maybe you think that was enough for you and you never saw any more knowledge about the deen, right? And so for you, shirk is not a big deal because you don't know that shirk is is one of the biggest sins ever. You think that it's no different than drinking alcohol or committing zina. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I agree with that. And I think probably, as sister you mentioned, she might not be as educated in the religion as she should be. And I think, was it like at the workplace where you discussed it? Because I know there's two things you never discuss at the workplace: is politics and religion.
Yeah. And and that's something that I definitely learned the hard way. I think
I don't
people
know.
talk more about politics or than religion, but I think the only time I ever came over religion was when I come up to people and I let them know, like, let's say a general conversation comes up and they're like, "Oh, why don't you want to do this?" And I'm like, "Hey, it goes against my religious belief." And they're like, "Oh, what's your religion?" And I'm like, I practice Islam and stuff like that. So for some people, it's an uncomfortable conversation. And I've tried to have had conversations with her outside of work about it. And she's been like, because it's confusing what she says. She's like, I wear the same religion, but then she says she's, quote, not religious, but she still prays every now and then.
Yeah, I
But
think yes, similar
it
street.
doesn't make any sense. Like, I guess, are you a cultural Muslim and you just it's a part of your identity because you were raised that way, but you don't do anything that's related to it. That's kind of weird to me. That's like, I can't imagine a cultural Christian. Like, I don't read the Bible. I don't do anything related to Christianity. I don't go to church and stuff like that. But I just call myself Christian because on December the 25th, I want to fit in.
Yeah, and I think those kind of people make it a bit harder for people who are trying to practice because I did have a situation where I remember like the first day I met like my manager, and she was like a female, isn't it? And she mentioned that they do like these board games at a bar, isn't it, at a pub, and then she mentioned that if would I want to come, like it was an invite, and I just rejected. I said no, and then she said, "Do you have like a problem with alcohol?" And I just said no, like I don't have a problem, but it's usually like Muslim, they don't go to those kind of places, isn't it? And then the funny thing, she said, I have a friend who's a Muslim, or like a colleague who's a Muslim, and she always comes, but she doesn't drink. And I thought, when I heard that, I just thought, oh no, she's creating chaos for me, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. And that happens a lot. For instance, I try to at least get, a Juma off every now and then, to attend Juma. I mean, during COVID, actually, a lot of places aren't even doing Juma anymore, unfortunately. But I at least try to attend a Juma. I have people that I know, they get Juma off for work. They don't maybe get the whole day off, but they get the time to go and pray for Juma, and they come back to work at least. For me, at my job, for instance, like there's no appropriate places to pray. Like all the offices are taken and stuff, and so it's like if I want to pray, I just don't even know where to go. At first, I prayed in my own office room, but now I share an office with like multiple people, so it's like kind of awkward, Like when I pray, I want to be focused and stuff and take my time.
Yeah.
So I've stopped praying at work. I was getting into praying at work, but now I don't pray at work anymore. I just wait until I go home and then I combine prayers.
Can you not find like a corner outside, or like maybe like a hallway or alleyway somewhere like private where you can just go? Can you not find, because I think if you could find like an empty car park and you just go in a corner and just pray when no one's looking.
I think I need to do that, but get a newer prayer rug, because I have like 2 prayer rugs. I have a portable one, which is really, really thin. So when I do pray outside on the ground, like my knees are actually messed up. Like, because when I was in the hospital, I was praying at the hospital and there's like no padding and stuff like that. So I was like, getting on my knees, and my knees were getting all messed up. And then on the streets and stuff like that, it's even like the same thing. And then my prayer rug that I use at home, I don't want to get that dirty because you have to hand wash it. So the more you hand wash it, the less good it looks in of itself. But that's not an excuse to, be late on prayers. You know what I'm saying?
Can you not go like inside your car or something, like your vehicle? You can pray sitting down, isn't it?
Oh, okay. I never actually really thought about that. I thought it was just like, it was kind of frowned upon. It was kind of frowned upon praying sitting down unless you have like an injury or something. You know what I mean? Like how old people do in the masjid.
But I think it's better to pray sitting down on time than not praying at all, I suppose.
Okay.
That might be, if it's easier for you, or if you can't find a place to stand. But
actually, that works, man. I could probably easily do that.
If you could do it in your car, you can just technically just open the door. Because I watch some YouTubers that are like taxi drivers, and then they just like when they're lifting, like these Uber drivers, and then they're like lifting someone, and they just stop on a highway, and then next to their car they just pray on the road.
Yeah, man, that's what's up. And
probably a good idea. But I think someone like me is pretty, like, I'm probably privileged because I have like in both my previous workplaces. I've had like a masjid right next to it.
Oh, okay. That's
Yeah.
that's awesome, man. I wish it was here, man. The matches are spread out all over the place, so yeah, it's a decent drive, you know.
Hmm. Yeah, that's sad. But yeah, I think back to the cultural thing. I think yeah, because I heard that I think in Muslim Spain, like back in like the 10th century, back in like a few hundred years ago, when the Muslims were like dominant within the culture, you had like a lot of Christians and a lot of Jewish people that actually dressed like the Muslims, and they started copying them, and they started speaking Arabic as well, because Arabic became like, how everyone knows English, even though like people from India and all around the world, they speak English, even though they don't actually live in the US or in the UK, but they still know it. So the same thing happened with Arabic, when people actually learnt it. So it was like, I always thought the dominant culture always has an effect on the on people. So I think
Yeah.
it becomes with political strength and power probably.
Yeah, and that's for sure. And that sucks because yeah, I like to assume the best of people, and it's just like when you have faith, right? You have to keep in your heart that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is always watching you, right? And that he's taking note of how important you consider him in your life, right?
Mm.
Um, and for some people it's like, man, it's only when they're down and out, or they're going through stuff, that they actually ever pray or try to have a connection again. But like when they're doing good, when they're getting all the money, or when they're successful, and especially I see this a lot too, unfortunately, with some, and this goes both to brothers and sisters, but in this context, I gotta say this about sisters. It seems like it's really harder for them to practice more than anything, because of it's especially
Yeah.
hijabis are really stigmatized in the West. So a lot
Mm.
of girls, like, they're being raised in, haram environments, going to public schools. They're not wearing hijab because they don't want to get picked on, that they don't want to get noticed. And also there's a lot of pressure, for instance, right? If a sister wears hijab, if she wears hijab consistently and she takes it off one day, people are going to have questions, or let's say she wears hijab and she's not modest. Like I understand kind of like the pressure, right? Like how hard of
Mm.
a decision that must be,
Mm.
to be perfect, to be the perfect Muslim woman, to be the perfect
Mm.
hijabi, you know?
It's true.
Uh, so that being said, um, it seems like it's harder for them if they haven't been consistent in praying and all this other stuff. It's so hard to get back on board and do that.
Yeah, that's true. I agree. Yeah, which then again it comes down to peer pressure and your environment and the people you associate with, and how they can actually bring you down. But I think even even Muslims who are not living in the West are like affected by American culture, or you could say Western culture. So I can only imagine people who actually live where you guys live, and I'm not sure what kind of system they have with the schools. Maybe they have like they can go to a private school, but then that's like expensive, and then it just
Yeah,
makes it really really hard, isn't it? So yeah, that's probably
yeah,
true. I
yeah,
think yeah,
and
with Islamic
that's
schools.
kind of crazy too. Also, another thing, it's because in the communities, right? They don't want to. Let's say they want to start dating and stuff. They're not going to date another Muslim boy because they know the community is going to know about it and that their parents are going to find out. So
Mm.
what they do is, unfortunately, they date non-believers. I see that a lot.
Mm.
They'll date somebody that's not even a believer at all, because not that they don't want to be with a Muslim man, but or brother, but they
So,
know that if they commit zina with one, it's going to be a big deal, right? And if they can go and get caught, they can go and hide the fact that they have a boyfriend if he's a non-believer and stuff. You know what I mean?
yeah, like the word won't spread as quickly, probably. But
Yeah.
then it always comes out anyway if it's public. Someone's gonna see somewhere, and like with these, like with immigrant communities, it's the word spreads a lot quicker. Like
Uh-huh.
people know each other, especially like Somalis. Like, oh, that's so and so walking over there, and somehow they just know you, and that's it. You're screwed.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yeah. That's real.
yeah, you can't really hide in public. But I think yeah, at the end of the day, it's always, I think it just comes down to conformity to the society rather than insecurity, because um, you could be insecure,
Mhm.
but you're probably insecure with your religion, and you think that people think of you in a different way. But
Yeah,
what I
and
found works is just, if
go
you
go
just
ahead.
yeah. So I was just gonna finish and say, what I found works the best is just avoiding politics and religion where you work. So like the good saying, "Don't shit where you eat," isn't it?
Oh yeah, 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 yeah. I feel you. I feel you.
So I've always
Um,
avoided that, but then otherwise, yeah, you can just say what you want, isn't it?
yeah, 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 yeah. So one thing I do think about, and this is probably the final topic that I think about, is I understand the wisdom of Sharia and stuff like that fully because is especially with the modern thinking, right? We think emotionally about stuff. We don't think about really the logic about behind things. And
Mm,
one thing that always I see that gets brought up, and this is happening also within Muslim YouTube, like sisters being like, "Why can't I marry a non-Muslim man?"
mm,
And now I truly understand why. But from what I've seen, right, it personally is a lot of sisters. If you marry a guy that isn't Muslim, you if you say you're quote practicing and you marry a guy that's not Muslim that doesn't
mm.
care about religion at all, like let's say he doesn't care about religion at all, you really think that you're going to still practice after being with him, and then let alone you have children with this guy, you really think that he's going to let you raise his children to be religious? You know what I mean? To
Yeah,
be completely honest, like you really think he's going to let you raise the children be religious, and
yeah,
especially like a lot of women don't realize that. They think that they are going to still be able to influence a man in the decisions of how a family is raised. But if it's a man they have any respect for, right? But if he's an
mm,
alpha male or any man that has any like standing for himself, he's not going to compromise his own morals and interests for you. You know what I'm saying? It's not going to happen. I don't know guys that have changed their politics because their wife was let's say the guy's conservative and his wife's a liberal. I've never met a guy that said I became liberal because of my wife. You know, like that we any self-respecting man doesn't operate like that, right? I
if you
never
go
met a
in
guy. Oh no,
Jubilee,
go ahead.
yeah, if you go in Jubilee, you probably find men that, what is it called, conform very quickly.
Yeah,
If you
don't
check
even get me
those
started on Jubilee, bro. Don't
Jubilee
even get
and
me
always,
started. It's just like a lot of sisters don't want to admit it, man. But like that's one of the wisest rules because if that was acceptable, right? Especially I think another thing too is if I marry a non-Muslim man, I'll be able to get away with X, Y, and Z, right? And you would have I feel like some of them feel like they would have more freedom to do this and do that. But at the same time, it's like if you're raising a family, you say that being, your religion is important to you.
mm,
What's more important to you, your religion or finding somebody that you quote love? And I think I had a conversation with a lot of people like this. I had a conversation with somebody. She's from Africa,
mm,
beautiful woman. She's not a sister. She's not Muslim, but she's African, right? And the way that a lot of Africans look upon marriage is actually feasible, right? She's like, hey, love is not as important as building a family, building a community, your culture, your religion, right?
yeah,
And in the West, it's completely all that doesn't matter. It's individualism. It's like, oh, I
mm,
love this person, and so that's why I'm going to marry them. Granted, love is an important thing. Love is not haram, right? Love is not haram. Like we're actually encouraged to love each other and care for each other, right?
yeah,
That being said, love comes and goes.
mm,
You know what I'm saying? Like, and especially these days, people don't even know what love and what lust is, right? I mean, it's so common for people to date somebody for like a year or two and they're moving in together
yeah,
and they're basically married in anything but name, right?
yeah,
And all too often that relationship is also destined to fail just as much as a marriage is. Like just because you love somebody doesn't mean you're going to sit there and settle for them because especially these days with people cheat a lot, there's a lot of infidelity and especially for a lot of girls, right? There's always a guy willing to, take his place, right? So that being said, what's the incentive to quote marry somebody just because you love them? You know?
mm. That's true. That's true. Yeah. But do you think that being like from a Muslim background, the barrier for being with someone is a lot higher than being a non-Muslim. So, for example, like if you want to be in a relationship as a Muslim, you have to get married, isn't it? So,
Yeah, honestly, that's so hard, bro, and
I'm not making.
it's so freaking hard because especially me being a revert and how it was before that and
Yeah.
adjusting to it now and just and I think that's the biggest and I think the sheikhs really need to try to pressure parents and be like, yo, the community needs to make it easier for young people to meet each other for
Yeah.
marriage and
Right.
be able to challenge that because bro, I talked to a Salafi brother actually the other day, and he says our Ummah is going to be in trouble when committing zina is going to be easier than getting married.
Yeah, I think I agree because like just for like for me to get married, I would have to probably save up at least 10 to 15,000 like pounds, which is roughly around probably 18 to 15,000 dollars, which is
Wow.
like so like in my mind, being a young person, I'm thinking, okay, to get married, I have to save all that much, but then to come in is just like $15 or £15, just a meal, just
Yeah,
like just in a
it's
party,
crazy.
and it just makes you think. On one hand, it's like you just like it's kind of depressing, where it's like where people start like when they make the barrier of entry like really high just to be in a halal relationship, but then on the other
Hmm.
hand, I think it makes you value it probably because um, like as a man, you just want to go around and just do like the whole pump and dump thing. But if you, if you really want to practice your religion, you want to make sure that you're sincere in it and that you try.
Yeah, yeah. And what's crazy is that I think, especially in America, the culture, even amongst people like, let's say they're not Muslim, let's say they're Christian, even in Christianity, premarital sex is not supposed to be a thing, but it's just common knowledge. Is like obviously they had sex before they got married. You know, it's like or they dated a long period of time before they got married, and it's kind of sad to see that sometimes it's like it's so hard to actually live up to like a standard like that these day and age
Mm.
because of the culture that we have. Like for instance, sex is considered like people I met people so many times like we talk about relationships and people make it seem like oh some people are legit like oh well sex doesn't matter and all this stuff but like bro a lot of these relationships are like a lot of it is the only thing that holds together a lot of relationships I've seen amongst my peers like whether it be friends or people that I've worked with in the past or something like that it's like if they weren't having good sex like their relationship would completely fall apart like they have nothing. I've met people that don't have anything in common with each other. They're from different cultures, different religions, all different kinds of stuff, right? But the only thing that really is like the center of the relationship is their sexual chemistry.
Mm.
Because if it wasn't for that, that attraction, they probably wouldn't tolerate that person. You know what I'm saying as much. You know what I mean? Like, especially if you're arguing with somebody all the time or you're fighting with somebody all the time or your finances aren't good and all that, or morally you guys are different people, and stuff like that. Unfortunately, I see that a lot of relationships are based upon that. And that's unfortunate because I think overall that creates a lot of dysfunction.
Yeah, I agree. And I think probably what also would create a lot of dysfunction is people also delaying marriage as well because it also I think it also affects emotionally both men and women, especially like for Muslims when they just like even as a Christian probably as well when they delay it and they say they want to go too deep in the dunya and be like oh I want to get this and this and this and this and then they start creating an image like in their minds and if later on it doesn't live to the expectation they could actually just crumble and be like oh I spent 10 years saving up and I
Mm-hmm.
spent 10 years like for the brothers I get married like after 30s and they start thinking oh no I've saved so much and it's not that big of a deal and then it could cause chaos later on.
Yeah, yeah, that's
Mm.
definitely true. And I think a lot of this too is
So both
unfortunately,
ways
I
is
don't want to judge. I don't mean to judge people and then act like I'm perfect because I talk about in this channel, like I'm very open about my mistakes, right?
yeah,
And talking about my faults and my shortcomings in order to humble myself, right? When I talk about things like that. That being said, um, I think a lot of girls, they don't really realize why, like, let's say some of them are naive and they're like, oh, I can just date a guy and I'm not going to get feelings attached and this is stuff. But all too often that ends up happening and they get their hearts broken. And I think they deal with a lot of problems because for a man, and this is my opinion as a man, right? Why would I submit myself to a woman or be faithful to a woman or committed to a woman, especially if she's giving me her body so easily? You know what I'm saying? Like if it didn't take much effort to get into your pants, then why would I do that? Like, what's the logic behind that? Because I know I'm not that special. Probably you probably have done that for this guy, that guy, X, Y, and Z, right? Especially let alone if it's guys that I've known, right? That's another thing. Like, it's one thing if you did it to strangers and get guys I don't know, but if it's guys that I know too, I know I'm not probably that special, right? And that you probably do this a lot, and so. Why would I say I'm exclusively going to do this, especially if I'm like going to provide for you, right? Why would I provide for you? Why would I keep a roof over your head? Why would I, support you in this way when, it's that easy for you to get involved with somebody? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I agree. But don't you think that's because of the change in the gender norms where women are now more assertive, they show male-like behaviors. So they're more like they're the ones chasing now. Before was the men that were chasing them. So now they're.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that's probably? And also, yeah, they're also the ones providing as well. So a lot of men are living off women as well. So
yeah, and I think that's screwing up a lot of men because I agree that you should be on your woman's level, if not more. That's my personal opinion. Because I'm going to be honest, and this has come from personal experience. No matter how much a woman loves you, if she feels like she's the main breadwinner in the relationship, she is always going to have some kind of opinion about you, more or less, like not as much. She won't respect you as much as if you were the provider. I'm just going to be honest. Like that's my personal opinion. People may think that's backward. I beg to differ. Like a lot of relationships where I see if the woman's the provider, if the woman's the main relationship, like the one providing the relationship, sometimes, unfortunately, I see that there's this resentment. But if they feel like they're the ones that are contributing so much and this and that, they're the ones that's going out to work all the time. They're the one that deals with this and deals with that, especially if they want to build a family with you and you're just, you can't be on her level. She's not going to respect you. Like a girl at least wants a guy that's has ambitions. Like you can't just sit on the couch all day, and have a woman that freaking works 40 hours a week full time and is putting the food on the table. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's true. But why do you think that is? Like, do you believe it's biological? Because in the Quran it does say that Allah has given, what is it called, the men authority because of what they spend from their pockets. Like the reason they got that authority position is because the burden of responsibility and provision falls on the man's shoulder. So
yeah,
because of that, the man has the right to say in a marriage, like he has the right to lead in the marriage, and the woman is like Islamically she has to listen to her husband and obey him. So
yeah, and I also think about like women these days think that submission and obeying your husband is such an oppressive thing. I'll tell you what, you obey your husband by not cheating on him. That's obeying your husband. Like, you know what I'm saying? Obeying your husband is not spending all your money on stupid stuff. That's obeying your husband. That's being a true partner. And I think a lot of the times too is for real. I think about this and I tell this to guys, right? For instance, let's say you marry your girl, and let's say, especially like, here's my thing, right? I may not marry a pious sister. I'm alhamdulillah, I hope, inshallah, I hope I do. Inshallah, I hope I meet, a woman that's pious, that helps me better myself in my man and strengthen my deen. We strengthen each other's deen and we have a beautiful family, inshallah. But at the same time, in the US, if I stay here, especially, that's going to be really hard to do. That being said, let's say, for instance, right, if I meet a woman, right, and she dresses a certain kind of way and stuff like that, she's not modest, she does this, she does that, and I marry her, and let's say I say, hey, you're my wife now, if you're no longer single, I would appreciate if you changed the way you dressed, if you changed the way you behaved around other men and people in public. What authority do I have to do that? Because she, from her standpoint, is, hey, I did that before. What how are you going to tell me what to do now? You know what I mean? So, especially if I'm not providing, like, I don't have any authority. I don't have a say. She's like, hey, well, I make my own money. I do my own thing. What do I need you for?
Yeah. That could be a problem.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's true. And do you think because okay, what do you think about if the situation like a 50-50 situation where both of you are equally providing? Do you think partnerships work as well?
It
Because
works for certain people, but I think as Muslims, we should stay away from that because that is the creation of feminism. If you are somebody that is not religious or you're secular or whatever like that, granted, that can work for you. I do know some people that works for them. They say, hey, I'm paying these bills, you're paying those bills. You know what I'm saying? Oh, I pay for this vacation, you pay for that vacation, or they have a joint bank account or something like that. If those are your morals or your convictions, then it could work for you if that's the understanding. Now you can't complain about the results of that, right? That being said, I feel like for us, we should stay away from that because it's rooted in feminism. For instance, a woman saying, oh, I want a guy to pay 50-50, right? And to me, it's like, why would you even be in a relationship with a man if you can do everything you're by yourself? Like, what logic would it be for you to live with another man, have his children, if you could do that by yourself? You know what I mean?
But they still they would by themselves they wouldn't get the companionship and the children and the affection that a man would give. So being a devil's advocate, they technically need that. So
I mean, they need that. They need that temporarily. I mean, we wouldn't have such a high single mother rate, and you know, in the UK and in the US, it's pretty big. The divorce rate is pretty big. And then there's also people having kids outside of marriage too. On top of that, but they still cohabitate, and that relationship doesn't last either because they're not married. So I think a lot of that is rooted in, hey, I can do it all by myself. What do I need you for? Like, yeah, you can have butterflies in your stomach and be in love with somebody and have that companionship. But when the going gets hard, people leave, you know?
I think no, it's not by themselves because there's always the government that's providing food stamps, welfare, housing. So if the government said, "Oh, sorry," because the spending that they spend is very high. So if they at one point said, "Oh, we're out," then I think a lot of women will start looking for men, and I think they would even make better decisions because they know that they'll be more accountable to their own decisions. So they won't end up like married, like being with a trash man or just like playing around with the player. They would actually know that if I play around with this person, this individual, I could end up getting burned. So yeah, I think that's where the government going crazy with the welfare messes things up as well.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And I think both men and women, we have our NAFs, right? And one thing that I noticed, right, is it's more acceptable, especially in the West, for women to have NAFs as far as like their desires, their sexual desires, and that gratification. And they're more open about it now. And I think that in the long run, it's a bad thing because, especially in the age of social media, like if it's known, right, some girls actually they hide their relationships. I know it's like it's obvious that they're seeing different guys, but they hide their boyfriends because they still like the attention of other men. They still want other men to be interested in them because, like, just to be honest, no self-respecting man is going to want to be with the girl that puts out that she's being with multiple guys. Like, no guy wants that. Like, a lot of girls, even though they're open with their sexuality and stuff like that, on social media and stuff in public, they try to pretend like, oh yeah, you know, I'm single, right? They give the illusion that they're single during these time periods because they still want men to be interested in them. Like any high value man and any quality man is not going to be interested in a woman that is being out there, right? That's just not. I mean, keep it PG, but if you know a girl is out there, you're going to be less interested in being with her, right? So
for long term, you mean?
Yeah, and another thing with like a lot of girls is, and this kind of makes me like feel bad because, like, I noticed that I try to stay away from having like a lot of female friends and free mixing and stuff just for this reason. A lot of girls basically they get a lot of these times when they do get into a serious relationship with a guy, it's usually a guy that they're familiar with. Usually it's either a guy maybe that they know from proximity. It could be a classmate. It can be a classmate, a coworker, or a guy that they already consider to be their friend, right? And to me, I always felt bad about that because, especially for me, what always happened, right, is when I was a girl's friend, right, before, and this happened a lot when I, before I reverted, of course, I would be a girl's friend, and then I would see them with guy after guy, and they would get a new boyfriend, and see them go through this relationships with this guy, and then it's like it would only be after all of that they would eventually maybe get interested in me, and that made me feel, that hurt my self-esteem because it made me feel like I was the rebound guy, or I was the guy that
love choice
backup. Like, I wasn't the first choice. I like, as a man, I like to feel like I'm the first choice, right?
Yeah, true. That's true. Yeah. And do you think that come down to, like, all of that come down to, does it come down to lack of discipline or lack of religion, or is it just the way the society is moving with just the heedlessness?
I think it's just religion for a lot of people is just looked upon as being something backwards. Like, in general, where we live, especially the West, is a secularized worship secularism, and basically religion is, for a lot of people, it's just a culture. It has nothing to do with actually a lifestyle that you abide by, or morals and guidelines and ethics that you have in your guideline. You know what I mean? And people want to still fit in, and they don't like to feel like they're, that they're different, because especially in America, as much as we think we're a multicultural society that people fit in, they call it assimilation for a reason. You have to sacrifice what your culture and what your religion deems as being important in order to fit in. So if you don't drink, that's one thing. But if you say, hey, I pray 5 times a day and I need time to pray, or hey, you say I dress modestly, or hey, I don't do this, I don't do that, you're looked upon as being antisocial. And in America, being antisocial kind of has a big stigma to it, like, oh, you don't like doing things that other people like to do, something's wrong with you, And as we do that for religious reasons, especially with the propaganda out there, even amongst Muslims, right? They're like, oh, that brother has a beard and he wears a throat, and he prays 5 times a day, and he can recite Quran, and he knows different hadiths and all that stuff. Oh my God. They even self-consciously, I think I've even seen it where they think that guy is like a terrorist or something like that, or he's getting radicalized, because he's practicing, Islam the best he can, and that's kind of scary and sad to see, while these same Muslims accept, trans hijabis and stuff like that. You know what I mean? They accept that, but a brother actually just doing what he's supposed to do, or a sister doing what she's actually supposed to do, is looked upon like as being crazy,
Yeah, I understand, yeah. And I think, that it just comes back down to the whole assimilating thing that you mentioned, where they want people to be together, but I think this is where I think probably I agree with Trump in some ways, where building a wall might actually help, like separating, because when things are mixed, that's where people get influenced. But when you have like a wall where you say, oh, this is my religion, this is my culture, I don't agree with you, because even in the story of Ibrahim, he declared openly to his father and his tribe that we are enemies, and like we're not friends, and like between us is animosity until you come back to Tawheed, isn't it? So I think that's a lot of that element is missing from a lot of Muslims, where they have the pride in their own religion. They say no. I think even Christians have lost that pride as well, because whenever I see a Christian that's like really religious and self-respecting, like I respect them more than when I see like a wish-washy kind of Christian that's like, like the one that comes out and says, like all gay people are gonna go to like paradise and all this. Like things that go against their own religion, it just makes me think: Are you even serious?
Yeah, actually, Jubilee had an episode where it was like liberal Christians and evangelical or conservative Christians, and they had a debate. And man, some of the stuff the liberal Christians were talking about, it's just like, bro, why are you even Christian? Like at all? Like, bro, it just seems like you interpret things the most liberal way you can. Like you sex before marriage is not a big deal. And I'm not going to try and get this for channel flag, but other things like that are considered completely permissible, and promiscuous sex is considered permissible. Doing drugs is considered permissible. It's like, why do you even why like, if there is a God, like, why do you even believe in God if you just say that all the things that he told you to do don't matter?
Yeah, I think that's probably the biggest agenda with Muslims is like reforming the Quran and changing it, like changing its meaning and changing the words and making Muslims no longer adhere to it as strong as they do, because we have the belief that it's unchanged, uncreated. It is unchanged. It's uncreated. It's the speech of God. So because of that, they wish to like change it and think make us more quote unquote modernized. So it hasn't been successful so far, but there's a lot of people trying within the UK, and there's a lot of foundations actually set up.
Yeah. What's crazy is I think that Islam is the last great religion to hold its own. You look at every religion in the world, they've completely have gotten so deviated away from its origins that it's unrecognizable, right? I mean, even look at Buddhism, for instance, right? I was a really big, really interested in Buddhism for a long period of time. And you look at Buddha, like look at it. There's statues of the Buddha. Like Buddha, like, was against all that. That's he was against idolatry. He didn't want to be worshipped as a god, right? But people still, it's kind of like how they did for Isa, right? Like they still they had their own interpretation of it, and they completely took it somewhere completely else, for their own desires,
I think that was the Romans when the Council of Nicaea and all that.
Exactly.
With Constantine, but people they still dispute whether he was actually a Christian or still a pagan.
Yeah, that's true. And that's one thing I think that's really good about Islam. And I think that we need to have open discussions as an ummah about, and with the ulama, with our scholars too, and basically be like, hey, we need to create strong foundations. And yes, there's different schools of thought and stuff like that, but we need to be very consistent with each other, having some kind of basis, because we have to unite against the forces that are trying to corrupt it for various different reasons. And at the same time, I think we need to also be gentle with each other, and that's one thing I don't like about YouTube, or even when I watch stuff about speakers corners, right? It's like there's some really good people like giving dawah, like amazing people. The dawah scene in the UK especially is amazing, right? That being said, I feel like some people are a little bit too harsh on other people. Like, it's like, oh, well, so-and-so, I caught them with a girlfriend or a boyfriend. So-and-so, I saw them drink alcohol or smoke weed. So-and-so did this, so-and-so do that. And especially I notice from parents, right? What I notice from a lot of people that don't practice or that just leave Islam altogether, a lot of it has to do with how their parents treated them, right?
Hardship.
And especially like, oh, I wasn't like atheist or anything like that, but I just had questions about the deen, and all my mom and my dad ever did was just treat me really bad and say, how dare you question this? How dare you question that? And then they sent me to a really strict school where the sheikh was constantly telling me how bad of a person I was. And nobody likes to feel bad, right? So imagine like all you do is just constantly talk about how bad somebody is or how deviant somebody is. And then eventually like I think they just leave because they're just like, hey, this faith is impossible for me to practice because number one, people don't want me, like, they don't want me around. They don't respect me. And then, I can never do enough. Right. And I think there's like an idea, even amongst people that don't practice, right. They're like, in order to be a Muslim, you have to be perfect, and Muslims are, we had to be robots and we had to be perfect and stuff. Granted, we had to strive as best as we can. Right. That's very, very important. However, when they see somebody fall short, everybody likes to see somebody that's pious fall, right? They're like, I caught you drinking, I caught you smoking, I caught you committing zina,
It makes them feel better, doesn't it?
Yeah, it makes them feel better about themselves.
And I think there was actually a story of a man who actually came to the Prophet and said, "Oh, messenger of God, of Allah, and allow me to commit zina, isn't it? He said, let me just do it. It's getting hot. It's getting hot in here. So
Yeah, man.
the prophet said to him, "Oh, like, would you want for your mother to do it? Like, would you be happy if your mother was doing it?" And then he said, "No." He said, "Would you be happy if your sister was doing it?" And he said, "No." Like, what about your daughter? He said, "No." So then he said, "Why would you want it for someone else as well?" So like
And
he was teaching like camaraderie, community,
mhm.
loving for yourself, what you love for others. And then in the end, like he put his hand on his chest and he made dua for him. And then after that, he said after that the thoughts and the whole lost thing just left me. I mean, we don't have that privilege today to go to Allah.
Yeah, we don't.
But
And
we
it's
still have the
because like
morals,
there's
the lessons, like his leniency and how soft it was, and like like he wasn't harsh. Because like with the whole idea of repentance, like sometimes I think of it like if you had a daughter or you had like a baby sister, and he told her like don't touch that, like the heaters, like how it's hot. You tell her don't touch the heater. It's really hot. It's gonna burn you. And then she does it. And then when she does it, she apologizes to you. She says, "Oh, sorry, Dad. Sorry, my big brother." Like you would automatically forgive her, like out of your love. And then if she did it a million times, every single time she came to you and she just said, "Sorry, Dad. I'm very sorry, Dad. Forgive me." You'd always forgive her. You wouldn't be like, "Oh no, now I'm gonna have to take you to hell. I'm gonna have to burn you forever." Like, no, that's
yeah.
the way. Like Allah's more forgiving than our own mothers, isn't it? And
Yeah,
so
yeah, and that's what's
as
up.
long as you're trying and you
And the
forgive your
thing about
brothers.
our oh no, go ahead.
Yes, I was saying, yeah. I think with humans, like we're not that forgiving of ourselves. We're too harsh. So like, if we do something wrong,
Yeah.
we're too harsh. We're too harsh with ourselves. And then when we do something right, we
Mhm.
think we deserve more than what we actually did. So like, whenever you do a good deed, you expect, oh yeah, I prayed. No, I deserve paradise. I deserve Jannah, isn't it? And then when you do something wrong, you think, oh, I'm gonna go to hell. That's it. I'm screwed.
Yeah,
So
and if you, especially if you look at um this is a big thing too, especially I notice with us as a community. There is, I think, a big problem too is being consistent. And for instance,
mm,
it's like, we acknowledge that the prophet, peace be upon him, was the best of all the prophets that were sent down to mankind, right? Or given to mankind. And that, they say hadith is important and stuff like that, but they look upon is like the hadiths that it talks about the warfare and all this stuff, but they ignore how merciful he was, how understanding he was, how compassionate he was, how much empathy he had. And they also, especially considering the time frame of the society and the culture that he lived in, right? That being
mm,
said, also, whenever I look at ex-Muslim channels, it's always like they always talk about the harsh stuff of it, and especially like, there's supposed to be no compulsory obligations for in the religion. Like you can't force somebody to
yeah,
remain that way because, and I think in general we create our worst enemies by doing that. Like let's say, hey, like, hey, I wish the best for you. You say you don't practice. You say that you're not religious. Hey,
mm,
um, it's okay as if you can acknowledge that and be honest about it. At least you're being
yeah.
open and honest about it to the point to where you say, hey,
And
I don't have a problem with the community. I don't have a problem with community. I just, in my heart, I'm just not feeling this right now. And you say, hey, as long as you're not trying to discredit and destroy the community, hey, go about your business, right? At
mm,
this, and it's good at the same time to have standards, right? Like and say, hey, I'd rather have this person out than have them stay in and corrupt it, and make Islam look bad.
like a
That
hypocrite,
being,
like
yeah, that being said, I think we turn a lot of, because there's a lot of people, believe it or not, that they come back.
yeah,
They leave and say, hey, for a while I didn't practice and this and that, and then after a while, I saw somebody that made me want to practice again. And I think a lot of the best dawah, and actually this is why I don't give dawah on my channel. The
mm,
best dawah you can give is by how you treat people.
mm. That's true.
You
Yeah.
know what I'm saying? It's not just the knowledge and the theology, because some people they still don't understand that, like, I don't believe there's a God. That's impossible. That doesn't make any sense. It sounds like a bunch of fairy tales, yada, yada, yada. That's what a lot of atheists say. Like, it doesn't make any sense. It's crazy,
Mm,
right? But I noticed for me, for instance, right? What
mm,
got me, besides the theological talking points and the scholarly knowledge, was
mm.
I saw like my sheikh and how he
Yeah.
carried himself. I
Really?
was like,
Okay.
man, I want to be like that, you
Wow.
know?
Wow. That's amazing, man. That's amazing. Well, subhanallah. I mean, yeah, that's true. Like the manners will get you further than. But I think with a lot of ex-Muslims, and I think I'm realizing this as I grow up. Like they're struggling with their nafs, isn't it? They're struggling with their desires, and
Mhm.
the problem with like going all out is that you think you're free, but you're not actually free because I remember
Mhm.
there was one video I was watching. I think it was Muhammad Hijab was saying there's a verse in the Quran that was saying that what's better, like Allah was saying that there's two slaves. One of them is a slave to different masters, and they all have different competing like desires. Like one master tells him to go there, another master tells him to go there, and then they're all fighting each other. And another slave only has one master that has one wish, like one will. Which one's better? Like Allah's comparing which slave is in a better situation, the one with many masters that have different desires, or the one slave that only has one master. So that slave is basically like us. We're supposed to have only one master, which is Allah. But
Yep.
if we reject him, then we're going to open a door to the other masters, which is lust, materialism, like what is it called, craving of power, um, like all these other masters that are just waiting in the shadows. As soon as we
Yeah,
reject our
and
creator,
that's
then
so true, bro. And that's why I realized in my life I was an atheist and I didn't believe in God, but sex was
mm,
my God. Money was my God.
exactly.
Music was my God. Um, Entertainment was my God.
Mm,
Um, and especially if you notice one thing, especially about atheists, right?
mm,
And especially when they're in a relationship with somebody, right? That person is literally their God. Like when they're in love and they like whether it be their boyfriend, their girlfriend, their husband, their wife, right? That
yeah.
person is their God, right? And that's why they take breakups so bad, right? It's because we know divorce is permissible and stuff like that. Sometimes things don't work out or whatever like
Mm,
that. And at the end of the day, it's our connection to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that's considered more important. Like, you know what I'm saying? That's more important than your spouse. That's more
mm,
important than your children, right?
yep.
That being said, that's a if you don't have that and that thing is your whole life, yeah, that person you built a life with them, that's your whole life, and you don't have that,
And you're never
like
going to see it.
people lose it. People completely lose themselves, and especially like I even think about this, bro. And this is sad, and this my heart goes out to anybody that's gone through this, bro. Your spouse can leave, and
Hmm.
your children can also leave you too. Your children cannot respect you and say, "Hey, I don't like you." Like, look at nursing homes, right? It's full of old people that got abandoned by their families, right?
Yep.
That can happen, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as long as you keep him in your heart, he will never leave you.
That's true.
Mhm.
Mm. And I think a lot of people they mistake hardship with him leaving them. I think that's also another issue where they'll go through a tough time and then they'll think, oh, that's it. God doesn't care about me. Allah's neglecting me. But then, but they don't realize that in those hardships, that's where like you grow the most, and that's where you actually get closer to Allah. And
Mhm.
um, you don't know, like you don't know the future, isn't it? Because in this moment you can be like, oh, it's really hard. The times are tough. Like you could lose your job, wife, money. You could get sick. But like I think the story of Prophet Ayub, isn't it? He was sick for 70 years, and he was going through like crazy hardship for 70 years, and he never once said, "Oh Allah, why did you do this to me?" Or like
Mhm.
if you look at the stories of most of the prophets, they actually went through they went through a harder life than we went through. Actually, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, and with that gets me thinking too is
Joseph, the story of
yeah,
Yusuf.
yeah, Joseph, yeah, he was one of the great ones too. And one thing that I think about a lot is um first I had somebody reply. I don't know if you saw this comment, but somebody replied to my video. It was basically one of my videos. It was about why do people lose faith, and I talked
Mm,
about my own experience and why I lost faith when I was a Christian, right? And I said this is also why I see commonly, personally, of why people lose faith and a higher power, God, religion, whatever, right?
mm,
And I had somebody comment, and he was being respectful. Shout out to his brother. Actually, invite him to the open mic so he can explain himself, but this
yep.
guy said he was a Christian. He was from the UK, and he said, "Oh, hey, I lost faith because my mom was a devout Christian and she was killed by a serial killer." And
Wow.
he was like, my God didn't protect my mother, and she was one of the most devout people I've ever seen, and I
Mm,
lost faith because of that. And
mm,
hey, much respect to you, but I thought I'd give you my perspective, and I
mm,
understand where he's coming from. You had that feeling because I had a lot of feelings where I was like going through hardships. My parents divorced. I was going through child abuse, and all this other kind of stuff, being bullied, and all kinds of stuff, raised in a broken home. And I thought that God hated me too. I thought God hated me and was bad. And now, granted, my parents didn't die. Alhamdulillah, they're still here. So I was able to rekindle a relationship with them. And our parents aren't perfect, but they're the only parents we have, right? So we have to be very grateful for what we do have, right? So that being said, I understand, like, for instance, right? I think from the outside looking in too, for his perspective, right? Yes, his mother is dead, and inshallah, hope may she have been treated, when she met her creator with the utmost mercy. You know what I mean? And for all for the most part, right? At least according to her, let's say according to her belief systems, right? If she's a Christian, right? She was a devout Christian. If she dies and she did according to the teachings of what she believed, she's in heaven right now, right? I mean, she's in paradise. She died innocent. She died virtuous. So she's in heaven. She's in paradise. But I think that people are so tied to this dunya and this material world that they don't look upon that. Like, I've even seen like videos of like in the Syrian war, like people lose their children, and the people go up to them and they're like, "Oh, your son just died. How does that feel?" Like, blah blah blah. And some of them are just like, "Hey, my son is with Allah now."
Yeah.
They're like they're grieving, right? But they're like, "Hey, he's in a better place right now. He's no longer suffering. He's in Jannah. And that always struck me so hard. It's just like, for somebody to go through that loss and still have that comfort, knowing that, hey, my child, my loved one died innocent.
Yeah. And yeah, there's even there's the story of how the Prophet lost his uncle and how like he was mutilated in the battle of Uhud, isn't it? And there's like a spear that went through him, and then after that, like after the Muslims left the battlefield, the pagans came and they started mutilating people, like chopping them up. And his uncle Hamza, they actually made a necklace out of his fingers. So they took his fingers and his ears, and they actually made a necklace out of it. And then they cut open his stomach, and his liver came out. And then the Prophet actually saw that sight, like his beloved uncle, and all of his friends were just dead. So even with that pain, like he knew that they were in a better place, isn't it? And I think that's when you're an atheist, you don't have that with you, and you're just thinking, oh, all I have is this world, and I've lost the person that I love the most in this world, and I'll never see them again. So it's like I think it always ends up in nihilism, whether you like it or not, because whenever something, like I've heard and seen people that they can't just stop working, like they will never stop working. There will never be a day where they just like sit down and just contemplate, because if they do, they're just going to lose their minds.
Yeah, man, people are in the rat race, and I even think this to people. Their materialism matters to them so much, and that's what they equate to happiness. Like, that's why I want to be a school teacher, right? Like, materialism is granted. I do want to live well, but being the richest man in the world doesn't matter to me. I like helping people. I love helping people, especially young people, because I know what it's like to feel young and feel lost and feel like nobody cares about you, right? So that's my purpose in life. That purpose in my life will make me happier than the richest person ever, in my opinion, right? And we look at celebrities and all these rich people. They're not happy. A lot of them are not happy. They it's all facade. They're just as miserable as ordinary people are. And I see so many people, and it's disheartening to see so many people base their entire life off of acquiring new things, like getting a new computer, getting a new girlfriend, getting a new boyfriend, getting a new car, getting a new video game, getting a new music album from their favorite artist, going on another vacation. That's all people look up to, right? That's all people look forward to, but they don't have it. Behind that, it's just complete emptiness, because let's say they had that, like, lockdown has exposed this, coronavirus has exposed this. Now that people don't have access to those things, people are miserable,
Yeah. I think there was a famous Chinese saying that said, if you want to be happy for a day, go to sleep, because you can just sleep for a long day. If you want to be happy for a month, get married. If you want to be happy for a year, if you want to be happy for a month or for a year, I think get married. If you want to be happy for a lifetime, then help others. I think there was a Chinese thing like that. I might have
Hey man,
butchered it.
yo, you got to email that to me, bro. You got to email it to me. That's a beautiful quote.
I might have butchered it, but yeah, it was something about you find the most happiness in helping others. But yeah, I think the problem is like you mentioned teaching. You might not be able to help others to a greatest extent because there's a curriculum and there's like a structure, and if you end up deviating from that structure, you might get disciplined or you might get in trouble. I think
Mhm.
I think that's the problem with state schools and public schools where if you
Yeah,
try teaching something that's not, well, they might even force you to teach something against your morals and your belief, and you end up saying, "What? This is not
Mhm.
what I signed up for." So I think the only way you can teach someone the most is if you have your own son. Like that's where you can pass your values 100%, and no one can question it. And yeah, and if they do,
yeah,
you tell them it was my son. But when it comes to other people's children, they might tell you, "Oh, why did you tell my son this?" Or "Who told you to teach my son this?"
yeah.
Because
Do you?
people don't respect teachers like they used to. Like the
Yeah, it's
authority.
true. And here's something I really wanted to ask you. This is going to be the final note. So, on that podcast I put on YouTube, those brothers are really. It's a beautiful podcast. It's two black guys. One's a Reaver. I think the other one's Somali, and they talk about issues. I'm
The
sorry.
the young and the Muslim.
Yeah, Young and Muslim podcast, and they talk about really good topics. And they had one episode, for instance, actually two episodes that I really like of theirs is they had one where it was this guy's a scholar. He's an African American scholar, right? And he talks about the difference between culture and religion. And actually, I was going to show.
I've seen this actually. I've seen this podcast. You're right. I've
Yeah,
seen it.
yeah, yeah. That was a pretty good episode, and how he kind of explained, you know, how people try to reconcile their culture with their religion, and how the you know, the differences between the two. And then they had another one. It was a sister. I forgot her name. I think her last name was Saeed, and she's not, honestly, you would not think that this woman is Muslim, right? She dresses like an ordinary chick that you would see these days. Her clothes are a little bit more tighter fitting than they should, and she doesn't wear hijab. And she's actually beautiful. Like, you know, mashallah, you know, I lower my gaze whenever I try to watch that podcast episode. But she's a beautiful woman, bro. She's a
Bro, but
beautiful woman, bro.
she's getting
And
sins, man.
yeah. Sorry about
You're giving
that.
her that sins, man. You're giving her that sins.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, sorry, I'm giving into it. But bro, she, as far as like, but the way this girl talks, bro, she talks like a niqabi. Like she
Wow.
talks about basically, so she's a spiritual traveler, and basically she gets people to travel to Muslim countries and stuff like that, and
Mm-hmm.
see like historical sites and things like that. And she was even talking about her interactions with brothers. And this is, granted, this is coming from her word. She wasn't
Yeah.
talking about going on dates. She was just
Mm-hmm.
saying, hey, you know, if I'm around with a guy with another gender, I let him know, like, hey, you know, I'm not interested in this. I'm not interested in that. Like, hey, you know, I'm practicing. I'm not involved in Zena and stuff like that. And she also talked about sexual harassment in Cairo. And she's like, hey, I covered myself up. I wore a hijab. I wore loose clothing, and I still got sexually harassed. You know,
Yeah.
and I didn't even know. Like, apparently the word's getting out there, not just from sisters, but I heard like brothers being like, if I'm with my sisters or my mom or my daughters or my wife, I don't let them leave the house alone in Cairo. Like that's how
Yeah.
bad Cairo is getting.
Like Arab countries, yeah. Some of the countries are it's getting bad. It's getting bad. Yeah, you're right. And
Mm-hmm.
I think yeah, when you talk about the dress code and everything, there's like I think I've realized there's two types of people. There's type one, where you find like the hijabis that just wear the scarf on the head, but then like his jeans and everything's like it's tight, so it's not like they're really wearing it. And then there's other ones that they're modest when it comes to everyone else, but they're not wearing the hijab. So like I have met people before that like I was surprised like they were like proper like they were selfies and everything, but then on the Instagram they're posting like haram pictures, isn't it? So I was always surprised, like how can like they're reconciling that aspect of themselves. And with me, I think the one thing I believe is that like piety, it shows on the limbs as well. Not only like it's not only the heart. It starts at the heart, and then it grows around your whole body, and then it just shows in the limbs eventually. And you end up finding yourself, oh, you're not shaving your beard, you're wearing this, you're wearing your thobes,
Mm-hmm.
like you're lowering your gaze really well, like always as you go. Like you end up reaching that stage, like eventually, like where you become like a really when you actually become pious, isn't it? So I know
Yeah.
it's stages. It takes time, of course, it's stages and everything, but I believe like I heard an analogy where it's like if you have boiling water and you put it in a glass, you can feel the heat from the glass. So the same way, if you have like really strong taqwa and iman, you can feel it on your skin and your face, isn't it? And yeah,
Yeah.
that's the same way. Like if I see a sister's like wearing niqab and like I don't know the inside. Of course, she could be a rotten person, but if I see on the outside she's wearing the niqab and then like she's acting modest, I somehow think she's like more pious than a person who's like just like all out there, isn't it? Like it could be the other way around. Allah knows, isn't it? It could be that the niqab is the worst woman. That if you she's
Yeah.
rude, she's arrogant. Because if you have arrogance, then like arrogance is one of the biggest things that you can have as a Muslim, isn't it? Because I think that's why a lot of people like your channel was like you're humble, isn't it? And you're willing to like take criticism or learn. Like people just end up liking you, but if you're arrogant and you think you're better than others, like no matter how knowledgeable you are, like people just run away from you. Self-praising, what is it called? Pious, self-piety, arrogance. Like those are horrible traits, isn't it?
Yeah, that's very true, man. And like yeah, one thing, especially for instance, when I think about spouses like our sisters, right? I'm not gonna make standards for myself that I don't meet and expect you to meet them. So I like to think that I dress modest, right? For instance, right? Even if I do go swimming or I'm working out, right? I'm always wearing a t-shirt. Like I never wear a tank top, work out with my shirt off. Because if I had a spouse or daughters or stuff, I wouldn't want them to do that either, right? Like in the same instance. If I wear shorts, for instance, right? I'll wear something under them, like leggings, for instance, right? To where at least at the very most, if it goes above the knees, at least my skin's covered, right?
Yep.
Like leg warmers or something like that, or like thermals, you know? And like, because I feel like this is another thing that I think that we need to do as brothers, right? And this is not being a simp or anything like that. This is just me keeping real. Brothers, we have to understand that it's harder for a lot of our sisters more than it is for us, right? Like for me, especially as a revert, there's things I did in the past, and I can still find a wife, right? She can know that I did this, I did that, right? And I can still find a woman that wants to be with me, right? For a sister, especially a revert sister, can you imagine, like, let's say, you know, you can go on her Instagram and see her in a bikini, or you can see that she dated multiple men, or she drank alcohol, or she did drugs. Like, imagine like she reverts and she becomes a niqabi, like overnight and stuff like that. And, you know, we have to be honest to our spouses about, you know, our past and stuff. Imagine like how hard it is going to be for her to find a husband, you know?
Yeah. It's gonna be hard because people gonna be judgmental.
Exactly.
And like I think that's the good thing where sins are. That's the good thing of hiding your sins is like and not making it public is that because it's only between you and Allah. Like no one knows about it. But the second it becomes public, that's when like it's no longer between you and your creators, and it's like now there's other parties involved. And like I think that's why Islam's like it's really against like, you know, public sinning is like there's sinning, private sinning, and then there's public sinning, and then public sinning is like even on a higher level than private sinning, because I think there's a hadith that says the Prophet said, "Where everyone in my nation is forgiven except those who publicly sin," and it's like someone asks, "What is that?" It's like those people that they commit sins in the night, and Allah covered it for them, and then they go outside the next day and then they expose their sins, like they brag about it. It's like, yeah, yesterday I committed sin with her, and I did this with this, and I robbed this guy, and they come out openly, and then they just start bragging. Those people are not forgiven, is it? Because they're proud of it.
Yeah, there's no in general. This is even outside the deen. Like, there's no shame with anything anymore. Like, there's people that, you know, it's just disgusting. Like, I even see it like on my feed, for instance. My phone company has a news feed, and all of it is so much garbage. It's like, oh, so and so just started on OnlyFans. Oh, so and so just took a picture of her in a bikini. Oh, so and so just is rumored to have sex with this amount of people. And it's like, this is national news. This is news that's considered important. What's going on in politics is not important. What's going on, like the social issues, poverty, war, and all this other stuff, that's not important. It's what's important is me getting to know somebody's sex life. Like, there's no shame anymore, you know?
Yeah, that's it. I think there's a hadith that says when there's no shame, do whatever you wish. Like your iman is like your faith is connected to how your shame isn't it? Like when you're shameful of sins, when you're shameful of like others seeing you sin, like that's such a good sign. That's a sign that you still have like faith and you're still upon good. But if you no longer have shame, like if you're openly, I think I saw a video one. I think it was a few years ago where it was like a group of it was like a club, isn't it? It was like it was just a normal club, and then I think I saw, have you seen the website Live Leak? Live Leak.
No, I haven't.
Yeah, it's like one of the websites that just posts everything from the internet. Like some of them can just be gory, some of them can be like not safe for work.
Yeah.
Let's just put it there. And then it was like a group of like youngsters just in a club, and then it was like they were all circling, they were all around a guy and a girl, and then the guy was actually doing it with the girl in the club. Like it was just a normal club, and everyone was just like they had their phones out and they were recording, and it was all like they were all in a circle and they were all clapping and cheering. And then when he finished, they all started clapping and they were like yeah. And then I think I saw it like probably 4 years ago, and then I thought to myself, that's it, man. It's like that's a sign of the day of judgment where people are publicly doing it and everyone's cheering. Like this is in a public club. Like you wouldn't even see that in your normal club. If you go to a pub or a club, that's not something you see. And then I think it was like spring break or something. It was in America, and I think it's like just signs that it's the end time, man. Like people have become so decadent that they're publicly doing that.
Yeah, it's shake my head all the way through, man. So, hey, man, hey, I'm sorry. We've been running for a good time. Hey, is this a good time for you, man? Because I would like to catch you more. You know what I'm saying? If this is your time zone, and this is appropriate, man. Like, I'll try to coordinate my stuff a lot more to have topics. So, send me more emails, like, and say, hey, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? So we can talk about it because you're a pretty cool guy, man. You're very knowledgeable, man. I mean, you're quoting hadith and all this and verses and surahs like it's nothing, bro. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, and shout out to you, bro. Alhamdulillah, man. It's good to see young brothers like you that were so knowledgeable.
Yeah, I think for me, since it's a Friday night, I'm just up so late. So it's this like probably this like 7 o'clock in the morning. It's like the whole worst time. But yeah, I think Friday nights, Saturday nights, I usually stay up late, but like on a weekday, I try going early because I have work, isn't it, the next day?
Yeah, you gotta get the Fajr in. You know what I'm saying too. Yeah.
Yeah, right now it's Fajr as well. It just came in right now, so yeah, alhamdulillah. So
Alhamdulillah, bro. So yeah, I'm gonna end it, man. I gotta finish something to eat, and whatnot. But thank you so much for coming on, man. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Take care, bro.
Thank you for having me, man. Jazakallah khair.